Everyone. So today we're going to be talking about a very fascinating subject that I have been wanting to do for some time. And if you are suffering with mental fog, reproductive problems such as infertility, thyroid dysfunction, fibrocystic breast disease, polycystic ovarian disease, autism, ADHD, goiters, problems in the prostate, and if you are concerned with breast health, you are going to want to hear today's broadcast because there is one mineral that has been linked to helping all of these ailments and more. I'm sure I haven't even begin to touch. I'm only scratching the surface. But if you're interested in finding out what that mineral is, I encourage you to stay tuned for another edition of Kosher 2.0. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Kosher 2.0. Besrat Hashem, with his help, we're going to get through a very fascinating subject, which I had mentioned before. I'd been wanting to do this for some time, but I'd wanted to really get in depth myself with my own experience so I can kind of report back. I always like to investigate things and then I try them and then I kind of share them with you guys. But this was very fascinating. We're going to be talking today about iodine. Now, iodine, it is reported by the World Health Organizations that approximately 2 billion, I'm going to say that again, 2 billion people worldwide have some form of iodine deficiency. Now, it's funny because iodine was actually, one of the biggest selling things in its day for good reason. And in fact, you can go to a pharmacy back in the day and you can get it, and they would use it as an antibiotic. They would use it to treat and kind of ward off all kinds of illnesses. And today you kind of you don't hear about it as much as you did before. And in fact, in my day, and I don't want to date myself, but it was touted as a very necessary nutrient. And many of you who are probably listening and probably at my age or older probably remember those days where, iodine it really was in everything. It was in your salt, it was in your bread, it was in everything. And now it's very hard to find it or to find anyone that's really talking about iodine. Yet there are a number of studies that show both the benefits and also, Has v'shalom, all the bad things that come in when you are deficient. So on top of now not hearing about, iodine and all of its wonderful benefits for you, we're starting to see it less in foods than we used to before. And in a perfect world, iodine, which is absorbed by the thyroid gland for the production of thyroid hormones, and the pituitary gland, which is located in the brain, would release out what's called TSH, which would then instruct the thyroid to release T4 and T3. If you have thyroid issues, you're well aware of these terms, but T4 and T3 are made by combining tyrosine with iodine and then releases into the bloodstream, and it's carried out throughout the body and the brain. And, and it likes to hang out in little places, the thyroid being the number one place it likes to hang out, the iodine. I would say for women, number 2 and 3 closely followed by that is, the ovaries and the breast tissue. So there are things, that are happening now in our diet that are kind of competing with the tyrosine, and as a result, we're starting to get this deficiency. And it's kind of a twofold thing. In the one hand, these things which are known as endocrine disruptors, which are competing for the tyrosine, are starting to attach on to the receptors, the iodine receptors, because they're small enough and they will fit into the receptor. So on the one hand, it's a plus because these are, and I'm going to get into what they are, but these these endocrine disrupting, things will attach onto the receptors. And so they'll compete and they'll get flushed out of the body if you have enough iodine going on. The problem is that many people don't have enough iodine going on for even that process. So then what happens is that you have these endocrine disrupting components, which, to get into them, they are, your aluminum, your lead, your mercury, your cadmium, arsenic, fluoride, bromide, chlorine. They are all competing. And unfortunately, we have more of that coming into the body as opposed to the iodine. So what ends up happening is that the iodine that we do get, its function at that point is just attaching onto these other things, which again, because there's such a deficiency to begin with, is starting to lead to these heavy metal toxicities that are happening in the body. And when that starts to happen, you start to see a whole bunch of illnesses and ailments start to plague any given person at any given time. Now, if you would ask me, I think maybe fluoride and aluminum are probably, neck and neck, because we are kind of introducing those on a daily basis for many of us that are not aware. And, fluoride, I really would encourage you to go out and do your own research on fluoride. And once you do, and you realize, how much water we're taking in, and also, the toothpaste that's fluorinated. And if for those of you that know, but you're still going out to eat, there's a good chance that that those people are not using bottled water or filter water, which, by the way, not every filter will filter out these metals. So you want to make sure that, if you decide to go into a filtration system, that it does account for this. So these things will start to, build up in the body. Now, in a perfect world, again, it would just attach onto the tyrosine and say la vie. Again, the plus side is that it will start to detox these metals out because they attach on. The trick at that point is to make sure that you have enough of the iodine coming into the body, that not only are you taking care of this buildup, but that you're actually having enough for, the tyrosine to go and to do what it's got to do. Now, one of the most fascinating things I found out about iodine is that it's an adaptogen that will automatically regulate the pH in the body. And I believe it may be the only one to do so. So if you're like me, and pH is, pH water is a very big thing for good reason. I still think people don't fully know how to use pH waters because sometimes they only drink pH. And then they start to have all these digestive problems and they don't even realize that it's linked to the fact that, the stomach needs a certain acidity. And when you keep putting pH in, especially when you drink it with the meals, it's a recipe for disaster. So sometimes I feel like, a lot of people, they hear these things, they jump on, they don't do the research, and then they still have, bad consequences. And they say, oh, this is, all this health stuff it's no good. It's not, so that really has to do with a lot of the fact that people just aren't doing the proper research into these things, which is why I encourage you to really start looking into what these, these heavy metals are doing, these endocrine disruptors into the body, which are really clogging up the liver, the kidneys, the whole lymphatic system, and so on and so forth. So, there's some food sources that are good. I personally, again, I told you that I like to use, I like to talk about products that I personally have, an experience with and that I've heard, the testimony of other people. Now, I don't rely primarily on food sources for the iodine. I like to take a nascent iodine supplement, but seaweed and kelp are sources of iodine. But again, when you're talking about how much contamination has gone into the water and the water system, again, there's a lot of our food is really in trouble. We really need to start rallying behind, farmers and fishermen and really start to really open our eyes to see what's going on with our food. But berries such as strawberries and cranberries are pretty good. Fish is another source of iodine, dark leafy green vegetables, and dairy products like eggs and cheese. Now, again, you want to make sure that all these sources are good, clean, organic sources. But again, I don't My personal experience is I don't rely on the food solely for the iodine. I don't think that it would provide enough of it. I don't use table salt, even if it does say has iodine. I use pink Himalayan salt, and I think I've mentioned that in a few broadcasts before. I really like the pink Himalayan salt as opposed to a regular table salt, even a kosher salt or sea salt. That is my go-to salt. So you are experiencing any of the things that we've spoken about, or know someone that is, I really encourage you to start doing your own study into iodine, and to what the proper dosage is to kind of get that detox process out. I've done a detox video before, and you should know about, the dangers of trying to put your body into a detox before it's time. I think detox can be great, but you have to remember what a detox is, and it's trying to flush out toxins from the body. And if your body is not prepared to handle that, you could be in for a world of trouble. So if you're listening through YouTube, I'm going to try to link that video down so that you can see it, and kind of really start to understand, what detoxification is, and the benefits and the catastrophic effects when you don't do it properly. But I have to tell you, after all of my research on iodine, I was so pleasantly surprised. And I have to tell you that I've been using it now with such great benefits. And it's at this point, it's become a staple in my own home with my husband and my children. I'm constantly giving it to them. Again, we're not talking about the iodine for wounds. We're talking about a good nascent iodine. As always, you have to do your research as to, what a proper dosage is for your body size and age. But at the end of the day, this broadcast is not meant to replace your doctor's or your naturopath's advice. It's used for information only. But you should always do your research and make an informed decision before starting or stopping any regimen. You really have to educate yourself on how the body works and how to take care of it. So I think that many of us think that that just comes automatically, that information, and it doesn't. It does take some time and effort, but you are your best advocate. So that's it for today, and I hope we'll all be together again soon. Besrat Hashem. If you've enjoyed this video or know someone who would, please share it. Tziko limitzvot.